I'm just clicking. Ding! Okay. So this SIG was in the governance document. So that's basically our seed. We thought we have two basic work streams, or two fundamental work streams. One is the technical work stream. How do we operate machines, and how do we make sure that machines don't die or whatnot? And then the community work stream, which is how do we onboard people? How do we publicize content? How do we organize ourselves? And out of these two special interest groups, other working groups or other entities will be formed. So basically, this meeting here will come up with a charter document on what do we want to do in this special interest group, and then we divvy out work like setting up clusters, monitoring, onboarding workloads, whatnot, whatever people think is necessary to provide operations of the Operate First Community Cloud. It is also is it the inaugural meeting? I don't know. It's the next iteration of several other meetings that have been in place, sometimes grassroots, sometimes out of Red Hat calendar invites, and this time we'll make it open for the community. We make it transparent from the get-go so that the process of how several entities are spawned is transparent. And it's not just because some manager at Red Hat thought that we need this thing and people showed up because they were on the invite list, but this time there's a working group, there's a time when the working group meets and everybody's free to join it. Does that answer most of your questions? And it's actually awesome that I see faces I haven't seen previously. So that's great. That's the first opening up of this meeting, because just I sent it to the mailing list, people showed up, which is cool. Good. I previously said that I would love from this meeting, or this first round, have a pull request for a charter document drafted where we define what is in scope and what is out of scope for the SIG operations. And second, maybe as bonus points, come up with one or two sub-projects or working groups which people are most passionate about, or which people deem to be super important, because we just discontinued every working group and every sprint meeting that we had previously. So we need to keep this thing alive anyways. Anything on top of that?
You said you wanted to create the sub-project, so at least like one or two, and you want those to go in the charter docs. Do they typically go in the charter docs? I don't think go in the 6 YAML, but
that depends on how much time we have. Maybe we're done with the charter in 10 minutes, and then we can ideate around working groups or sub-projects or whatnot. Okay. Because just because there's a charter document and there's a SIG operations doesn't mean that we actually get to work. And that depends also what's in the charter. So maybe the charter says something that I'm not expecting. Let's see.
Right.
Humer, you prepared a first draft, but before we go on screen share, somebody else? No? Then let's do it.
Okay, I guess I'll share my screen. But you can also go to this doc if you would rather work from there and make suggestions and all that good stuff. Okay, I hacked this together in the morning, so feel free to just disagree with the whole thing. Yeah, so this will be the charter starting out. The scope, I've defined it as the goal of the SIG is to this is the summary, by the way. The goal of the SIG is to manage and enable operations for hardware and platform tooling within the Opera First Community Cloud. So right off the bat, are we in agreement with that? Is there more or less as a summary?
That seems fine for a summary.
Marcel.
I don't think that the special interest groups manages operations, but
it's the sub-projects within the SIG that will.
Yes.
So does that this is where I guess my confusion is are those sub projects then like aren't they like kind of part of that SIG and therefore it's the SIG doing it? So or you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe somebody has clarification there.
Marcel, what if we moved it over so it said to enable management and operations?
Yes, just that's what I would say from a gut perspective or from a gut feeling. But maybe Torsten or somebody who was more involved in SIG previously knows better. For me, it's also I'm a total SIG noob.
Okay.
So I have a clarifying question. So the purpose is to deal, like the purpose of SIG operations is to deal with stuff relating to Operate First initiative exclusively, and like it doesn't have anything on like general operations, know-how, knowledge, SRE stuff, training documentation, anything, because like the scope limits it to there will be operations related activities from Operate First Community Cloud, and we'll be taking care of that. And that's it, is what I'm getting from the description.
That's a good point. So something like the telemetry working group, which is not related to managing telemetry or deploying telemetry within the community cloud, but is more like a special interest group in terms of people that deal with telemetry wouldn't fall under that. Same for
any SRE teams doing anything basically wouldn't fall within that. So this wouldn't be a group that could like glue together or get together SRE/ops teams, because like it's limited to Operate First Community Cloud.
Yes. To be honest, I would leave it constrained as this and move something like the telemetry working group and like SRE exchange platform for special topics into the community meeting, because they are like different sub-communities that get organized, and maybe it moves over here, maybe not.
I think though ideally that when we essentially do anything operations related, when we write documentation or when we're trying to like solve a problem, we're trying to usually word them in general terms so it's applicable outside Operate First community. At least I would like to think that's what we try to do, and sometimes we may not succeed. So I think that should still be like our underlying goal. And I don't know if I need to mention that here, but that's what I think. Okay.
Maybe clarifying question, Mariusz. I understood you like, do we limit ourselves to doing and documenting the operations and hardware for that community cloud, or do we want to open it up for general conversations about operations and telemetry?
Yep, that's my question. Like based on the name, my immediate thought would be that this would be more of a general SIG, not only limited to technologies and like approaches that the Operate First Community Cloud does, but maybe like I'm here first time, so that probably I'm wrong.
Oh yeah,
I'm here first time too, so that's perfect, and I'm glad that we have a discussion. And like I said, I would now draw the line here so that
Yeah.
we just focus on keeping the community cloud alive, and everything that goes beyond that moves first to the SIG community, and maybe if we don't find a place there, maybe we spawn up other SIGs. So that's the whole idea.
Cool. All right. So let's go on to the specifics of what is in scope. So I start out by saying, so like day-to-day operations of operate first OCP clusters. So I'll like make space here so that the things we keep will be at the top. And then if we pull anything from here, we'll put it at the top here and then empty out the bottom. So yeah, so what do we think about day-to-day operations of operate first OCP cluster? Specific, too specific, vague? We all in agreement that this is part of
Can
the
we,
scope?
are we with OCP too specific?
Will there
That
ever
is
be a
what
situation
I
where
was wondering a little
Mhm.
bit. Are we focused? Is our goal to be an OpenShift operating group, or is it bigger than that? And OpenShift is only a part, and it could conceivably
Okay.
grow to, encompass things outside of that.
I guess I was trying to be specific because I guess it depends on how we define the operate first cloud. Like I don't want it to be because we want to keep things out of scope that are in the cloud that are user workload. We don't want to operate those. We want to operate like
Right. But so let me expand on that a little bit. This has come up a little bit in other contexts in the question of what it means to provide SRE training at Red Hat, for example. Does SRE training mean we're going to teach you how to OpenShift, which is generally how we've been treating it? Or does it mean more than that? And I think this is a similar question. I mean, for example, we're running OpenShift on top of a variety of hardware environments. We need people who know how to manage that
Yeah.
hardware, who understand basic Linux networking and system configuration. How do you automate stuff on bare metal servers where you don't have OpenShift handy to run stuff? And is that part of what this group does?
I think it ought to be.
Yeah, because like I feel that when we hit problems that are below the OpenShift layer, we don't have a lot of people to look at those right now. And I think that that's something we should grow.
Yeah, and that's in scope from the definition up there. It's the operations for hardware and platform tooling. So maybe we.
Can that be
yes.
two separate things? Can we mention cluster specifically, and then as a separate scope, mention hardware and Linux administration and
Yeah, it can be more bullet points.
yeah.
Going from broad to more specific, and day-to-day operations of the operate first. I wouldn't even say it's clusters. I would keep it as operate first community cloud. Maybe attach platform to it, because the platform encompasses all the things that runs there, which is basically the same sentence as in the first the goal. But I think operate first cloud platform, if we treat stuff like Observatorium or ACM, which is part of the management layer, also as part of the platform, everything that we offer as a service from the platform. And if you want to onboard an application, and we offer some SRE tooling like monitoring tools or Loki for storing your logs, that's part of the platform offering. So that maybe in the future we need to define what's part of the platform, but I think that's broad enough to say we manage day-to-day operations of that platform community offering. And then we drill down into what that actually means.
I just worry that if we're including hardware in this definition, it becomes something of a background where, like, in my opinion, if we explicitly define it as a thing, then we are also actively looking for involving people for that thing. So in this case, like hardware. Does that make sense? Like, if we say explicitly, okay, we're looking to also manage hardware, then that's the explicit goal that we're not meeting. You can say that we're meeting this like kind of this day-to-day operation of Opera First Cloud Platform because we do manage the clusters when it's not like hardware related. I don't know.
Say that again. So you don't want to put hardware in there, or you want to put hardware in there?
I want the hardware to be like a separate point.
Yes. Make the hardware a second point.
Yeah. Okay.
So now I would just now be more specific. So what did you say? Incidents. Should we add something to the management, like these management infra cluster? We call them infra cluster or management and infra components?
Are you referring to a specific point?
No.
Or are you talking about adding a new point?
Not there.
Okay, just add it.
Cluster management tools. So operating and ensuring stability of cluster management tools. And then just instead of cluster management tools, it's platform management tools.
Like that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thoughts on this? So this is, I guess, basically our authentication layer, Argo CD, ACM, and anything that falls within that category.
So another question, does this group own, what the platform is? So, like DNS storage, and if someone, wants to add something to the community cloud platform, is this group part of that discussion? Or will someone else be able to, add stuff to that platform, which increases the responsibility of this group?
Good point. It's even broader. So maybe we put in there define before day-to-day operations. We say define the platform.
As in, this SIG defines the platform. So
yeah.
Well, we would at least be like some kind of like, I don't know, sorry to use the term, like a Raki matrix. We would be, I don't know, informed, or,
it should go through the
group
SIG.
would, give feedback to extending the capabilities of the platform. If this group is supposed to kind of like manage it, at least it should have a say in what the platform is.
Right.
But would each platform be a separate working group?
But like if we provide CNV as a component, maybe we create a sub project for managing CNV or cluster storage. Yes, I guess so.
Yeah.
So in my view, this SIG just coordinates stuff and then spins out groups or sub projects that do hands-on work. Here is just where all the heads are coming together to discuss what should be owned by SIG Operations, but it's not that we are doing anything in here. So yes.
Okay, so just trying to understand. So Marcel said define the platform. Are you saying that it should be the SIG that has this, like other teams, whatever, may come to the SIG and be like, we want to add this, but it is ultimately the SIG's decision whether something goes in and becomes and extends the platform, for example?
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
the SIG actually has to have a say in it, right? It needs
Yeah.
to also, that's why.
I think that's what I'm struggling with here is this, if somebody wants to stand up a cloud based purely on Kubernetes and not OpenShift and use different hardware, different things, is that going to fit under this SIG or not? And if so, this needs to be very generic, I think, and that says that, people will be welcome here. Maybe it's a sub SIG or something else, to create those things. And, I would think that something that is this general, in the title would have to apply to any community cloud that someone wants to create using any tools, techniques, or whatever, and there would be common stuff and there would be unique stuff. So, I mean, like the very first sentence here where it says the operate first community cloud kind of rings a bell for me to say, well, wait a minute, is there only one community cloud ever? And does it have to be these particular technologies and such? And I think we want to be more open than that. Somebody can build a VMware based cloud. Somebody can build pure.
Well, that's that's what we had in the governance doc. We explicitly called it the Op1ST community. So we are really specific that we are talking about this implementation that this team cares about.
Okay.
If somebody wants to do a fork or spin up another thing based on the content that we're creating, great, but that's not in scope for this group. So I would really focus this group here on, or this SIG on running what we're currently building out.
Okay. I just think within that first sentence, you should change the operate first community cloud to be to say this specific cloud, the OP1ST, if that's it, so that people don't get confused on that. So, okay, that's good. That's good clarification.
Yes. And I've been using the term operate first community cloud. I would think that's the last term that we came to when we had this discussion, like what was it, half a year ago, when we were also arguing whether is there one, can there be many?
Wait, can I ask for clarification? What's the
Yes.
difference between the operate first community cloud and op first, or like why do you have to specify this specifically? Is it like the living instance is what we mean by this? The current,
we already have multiple clouds also. Are they all part of the operate first community cloud? We have what, 4 different clusters currently?
There is the concept of an operate first community cloud, and then there is the living manifestation, which is what we operate. Some of us in this call, right? Like Smog and Fred, blah blah blah. So I think that's what we mean here, right? The SIG Operations.
So, but that goes back to Bill's question. So if somebody comes along and they want to start up, a cluster running on VMware, running straight Kubernetes, that can still be part of the operate first community cloud then, because we already have multiple clusters. That's just one more cluster under the same.
I think we have to
same umbrella.
And then they go, because that's in scope, define what is part and not part of the platform offering. They go through this SIG and say, look, I want to have a VMware-based compute resource donated to this. Does the SIG want to operate it? And then maybe yes, maybe no.
Okay, so it could be part of the community cloud then.
Yes.
So we're not. Excuse me. Bill, did that help at all?
Yeah, I think so. When you say the community cloud, it makes it sound like there's only ever going to be one, and another team could come in, build their own, which is not managed necessarily with the same tool set that and the same people, right? And based on some different technologies. I think that's great if that comes into this SIG.
Yeah, I mean they would come to the SIG and say that we want to do this as part of the community cloud, and they'd have to work through that process.
Right. Well, I would say, just I have trouble with the language. I would say, they can build an operate first community cloud as well, and there can be hundreds of them of all kinds of different shapes and sizes, and some with some common tools that might span them all, and others with unique tools based upon the technologies that they're using, right? So again, I try and when somebody says the community cloud, I can see that in a way as a term that works when you're talking about if these operations are going to cover every possible variable going forward that people want to bring, but when you use it to talk about the current one that people are running, it makes it sound like it's the only one ever. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't fit into that, it's not a community cloud, and that doesn't, that's kind of exclusive and not inclusive.
So I think that my initial question was kind of like, can anyone just come along and kind of like drop things on this group of people, and this group needs to just maintain or take care of whatever that person just throws at us.
No.
So that was kind of like what my initial question was. Do we have a say in what we operate, or what?
Yes, that's because I mean you brought up this point, and I think that was awesome. So this group needs to be the gatekeeper of what is part of this community cloud offering, because this group orchestrates what is operated. So it should be the SIG of all the working groups and sub-projects that operate components of the cloud offering.
So
And-
I kind of like mentally model it as like an open source like code community project, right? If you want to contribute code, you can show up and be part of that community and write and contribute code, and that can extend that into other areas if it makes sense for the community. And as long as you participate, you're allowed or able to do that. So it's, in a sense, that's kind of like how I'm thinking this. If more people want to join and want to do something under this umbrella, they're absolutely able to do that, but they also need to write that code or do those things.
Yeah, and I would imagine that would possibly, one avenue would be to like have a sub project that. And so does this, wait, that kind of, the SIG would create the sub projects, right? I'm assuming
Yeah.
it would be like the steering committee or something.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. So then I would imagine like when folks come and they're like, okay, well, we want to extend this platform, this cloud offering by adding blah, blah, blah. Then, yeah, like Johnny said, this is something that they can also get involved in, and we could convert that into like a sub project. Existing operation folks can be like kind of consultant advisors, blah, blah, on how to like fit everything in. But ultimately, we want to be able to scale operations, like, so a small team of people can't like keep operating a cloud that's continuously growing. So yeah, the other folks would be part of that project.
I think a key is not to bundle the operations team for a specific instance of a community cloud to the overall SIG, right? And it should be multiple teams, right? Somebody brings code on to do VMware, Kubernetes, whatever, directly. They'll be building their ops team too, or whatever. But common ops, great across all, but that's not something that would obligate the folks who are running the currently existing community cloud, to take on, right?
So my confusion is this, so I think, is this SIG going to be the SIG that kind of, there'll be like multiple of these operations teams, or is this SIG specifically dedicated to the offering that we have? And then if there's, and like, for example, I don't know how we define what's part of like the platform offering right now. It's been kind of loosely defined as, if you're managing the cluster by ACM and the GitOps of that cluster management.
That's exactly what this SIG is supposed to do. Define it, and that's here we can have the discussion whether we want to operate and have ACM part of the platform offering.
Okay.
Because before it was just divine intervention, and boom, it was there.
So operations related code bases, especially Kubernetes/Telemeter, can be donated to operate first via SIG Operations, and that doesn't require a new SIG to do that.
That's what I would imagine, yes. Maybe SIG community has hopefully they will have a welcoming meeting or a welcoming body where people can join and discuss whether they want to onboard and whether they want to be part of it. But if it actually should be operated and offered as a platform offering, which means it is in there, then this then it becomes a technical discussion, not a community discussion, and that should happen with all stakeholders of this platform, because if you have Prometheus, you probably want to have storage involved, and then the storage people say, but if you want to do it for long term, we don't have enough storage, for example. That's discussions that can happen in this SIG here. What do you think of bucketing it, this operating and ensuring stability off, and then some bullet points of I would remove platform upgrades then, because the platform itself is not upgraded, but only components.
Right.
Components.
So if this group is of the coordinating sort of role, the actual work, I guess, would be like something that's handled within sub-projects, and that's something. Do sub-projects themselves have a charter, or that...
yes, I don't know whether they have charters. That's
because like the language, for example, here is like I've wrote it as like there'll be actionable work for this, but I don't think that might be appropriate. So, for instance, providing automation runbooks, right? That's like those are going to be, that's like work in the sense of like you writing code and what have you, and that's, I would imagine, be something that will be a sub project. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that your impression as well, or?
Yes, definitely. SIG is just talking about it, and other people can work. So
Yeah.
So what does the SIG do? Does it just act as like an umbrella? Does it just act as an umbrella for sub projects, and all of the work happens in sub projects? Is the SIG basically a governing body?
That's what I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm understanding.
Okay.
But it's still that the sub projects are, at least how I understand SIGs and working groups. A working group would be something ephemeral with an end, but you don't want to end upgrading stuff. So you would have a sub project under the SIG taking care of hardware deployments or upgrading stuff. So it's not really a working group. It's something that it's in place where a team of people cares about upgrading components, or where they coordinate upgrades. Right? And that's something that not everybody in the SIG is interested in.
Yeah, so I'm envisioning like we have SIG Operations, that's us, and then there would be like SIG Operations dash GitOps, or SIG Operations dash I don't know, runbooks. I can't. I'm on my phone, so I can't read it so well. But yeah. And then the SIG community is something totally separate. Are we also starting a SIG community or no?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm okay with the term providing here, because we also have the term operating here. So sub projects will provide the GitOps framework.
So the way I understand it, anything actionable being mentioned here is something that the SIG is ultimately coordinating through sub projects. Makes sense?
Yeah. I think documentation is another important part. because otherwise we just do stuff and we don't document how we do stuff. This is just-
Documenting what is
uh,
gonna be
document,
work.
document all the things.
So Torsten did a really good thing for me, at least, to post a link into a diagram that explains this and kind of like relationships. That helped me kind of like understand.
Yeah, I love this diagram.
Very pretty diagram.
Yeah, this is basically what I was thinking of, like, so anything actionable. So for example, I don't know, like providing automation could be something that goes ultimately in a sub project, but we mention it in the SIG as it's covered over broadly by the SIG.
Documentation of all of. Can we be as specific as this ADR process? Should we put that in here? Documentation of or recording of all
Yeah,
decisions via the ADR process.
yeah. That's something we should be doing. Oh, also, so one thing that we end up doing anyways is like when new folks join and they don't have like OpenShift experience, for instance, we help them get ramped up. Is that something that should be a part of the SIG, or is that like a SIG training I heard somebody mention at some point? Or
I like that. Yes. So that's and it's not just for people that are new to SRE, but also people that are experienced and well versed. So how do I get
not just that, but also experienced in helping train or get people up to speed. So yeah.
Oh wait, do you mean getting started just with OpenShift OCP or like just operations in general? Because if it's operations in general, I would imagine it being a sub project from this SIG.
Good question. I feel like it seems to vary. It also it really depends on who's coming and what they want to do, I suppose. If it's like interns that there's a specific team that they were going to be working with, then I guess forward them to that team. If somebody says that like I'm just looking to, I don't know.
I mean, this openness, that should be also part of this SIG, that we don't create silos so that people can know where to go to. It's not,
Yeah.
and that's basically also a community aspect, but I think it's also super technical, so that we ensure that by choosing tools like GitHub issue tracker or something else, that we make it so that it's still open and discoverable.
So maybe that's something that happens as a side effect, that we ought to be writing all our documentation in such a way that a person could always figure out what to do. So naturally, okay.
I think this term inclusivity and transparency, ensuring inclusivity and transparency.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's easy as that. Hey, sub project ACM, you just created a private chat channel. That's not good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just bad at words. Maybe some English speaker can help me out here.
I like that, what you said, ensure inclusivity and transparency. So this eventually is going to be a pull request, and then we should all have like a few days to review that pull request and kind of, add thoughts there too.
Yeah, and it's not set in stone. Just because it's merged doesn't mean that we cannot always amend and change it.
Yeah. Let's are we still defining in scope? Can we start mentioning stuff that's out of scope? Because there's a lot of
Yes.
in scope right now.
Everything else.
So what is the purpose of having the out of scope section? Because
It's implied what's not in scope is out of scope is what.
right, that's kind of where I'm going. And if you list things as being explicitly out of scope, and then someone comes up with something that's not on the list and it's not on the in scope list, now you have, I don't know, now you have work to do.
Yeah.
I think of it as because we can't obviously list everything. It's just like it is the.
This is like a pre-decisions. These things are explicitly out of scope. Everything else is, up for discussion.
So,
Yeah.
like for example, I think one good example is the user workloads, right? Like I think it's tempting for operations to constantly like be helping folks with their issues that are like app related. Like somebody is like deploying Cassandra on Smog, and then they ask you like, "This is not working. This help chart's not working," right? Like, and I mean, I'll go in and I'll help them out, but I don't think it should be something that I should be doing, for example, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I feel like saying that explicitly, because it's something that's going to bound to happen, might be useful, but feel free to disagree. I don't know.
And the same goes with the procuring, for example, that I just tried in procuring the hardware infrastructure. If we are meant to coordinate these things, it's a very broad statement. So out of scope to me kind of narrows it down that we're talking about it, but we're not actually clicking buttons and ordering things and determining how much things cost and whatnot.
Yeah.
Debugging is vague.
Yeah, it's like with our CI/CD infrastructure. If you've ever dealt with OpenShift CI/CD, the team that maintains that infrastructure, they could care less if your tests are failing repeatedly. Like that's not their job. They just need to make sure that it's running. They don't care if everything's failing you. Like it's not that they don't care, but they're not going to help you. The individuals own their work on the cloud.
Are you talking about like debugging software, or?
I think debugging is part of user workload operations, because otherwise it's just regular operations.
It's tough to grasp for me. But sometimes you end up debugging stuff that doesn't really is in scope, so or too much hand holding. But maybe then that's also part of the documentation that's broken. I was just throwing it in here so that we don't that we explicitly say no to some work or some toil that might eat up too much time.
So there's the support repository, right? So anything out of scope would be anything that's not like I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Like it's not tracked in the support, or no.
I don't know, and maybe we amend it later. So maybe we just strike it for now.
I think I get what you're saying. It's just that it's hard to define because so like for example, if there's an incident and OpenShift pipelines, for instance, stops working, we can spend like days trying to investigate it, and we might not be coming up with the causes. And at that point, we might be like digging into logs and whatever, and that's essentially like debugging. So we want to like be able to say, no, this is not our problem. It's not working. Send an issue upstream. But in some instances, that can be like doing that for like 10 minutes can yield a solution. And so, you know what I mean? So you just kind of, it's like a judgment call when to do and when not to do that. I don't know if we should explicitly define it. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have one more thing to add in scope. What about the roadmap for upgrades and future stuff we will
Yeah.
do on the platform to make it predictable?
Yeah, platform roadmap. Yeah. Anything else you guys feel should be explicitly mentioned is out of scope that you might worry, you might tread towards? Okay. Is stakeholders is something we had for the working group charter? Do we need this for SIG? And if so, but who are the stakeholders?
We'll find out. SIG community. Right now, we don't have any other entities.
Community, the SIG community, yeah.
Yeah, the SIG community is definitely a stakeholder in there. So
Cool. The world. I'm just kidding. All right, disband criteria. There's no op first anymore. We'll disband. Oh, do we need a disband criteria? SIG is like, because that's for working groups, they're finite, right? SIGs are infinite. Fair?
I mean, the disband criteria, I guess, is the operate first cloud as a concept has disappeared, right?
Is that something we need to?
I don't think that needs to be explicitly stated. No.
SIG ops forever. Hashtag SIG ops forever. Operate first forever.
So we have 8 minutes left. Should we just leave it here?
Yeah, but can I just look, because I'm looking for more clarification on the discussion regarding like the cloud and the actual offering and the SIG's role in coordinating other efforts that are operations based, but not necessarily part of this specific offering. So like this SIG is going to define what is the offering, like the living instance of the concept of operate first, and it will be defining, well, it'll define that, and that may or may not include folks that are not directly involved with, like, for example, making PRs to the GitHub org and doing the GitOps of it. And is that right?
Is that a statement?
It's a question. So like, so for example, when Bill was talking about people coming from elsewhere looking to manage on tooling that's not OCP or what have you, so presumably then may not be using like, ACM, our ACM offering. They may not even be deploying they're using GitOps through our org, right? Is that something that could be part of this? Would this still be part of this, like SIG ops? Is that if they come asking, like, can we be part of this? I don't, because at that point I don't know what that means, right? Before it's clear, it's like, okay, these are the clusters that we manage. We have these folks that are operating on these clusters, and we know what it means to be part of the cloud at that point. like, oh, we onboarded via ACM, we put it in Git. Like that's what it meant for it to be an operate first offering. Now it seems a bit more abstract, right?
Yes.
Now it can be something that's not just that. And is that still something that can be part of this SIG, or is that to be to be defined?
I still don't get the question.
That's okay. I'll bring it up in the PR, try to word it more eloquently.
Yeah, so maybe that all starts in SIG community.
That's what I was thinking, right?
Yeah.
Because like I'm worried it'll get too vague, and it's all because this is supposed to replace meetings we were having before that were very specific about like clusters and operations. And if we start talking in very abstract terms and like what does it mean to be SIG ops, then I don't know what how much purpose you're going to get out of it.
Yeah. I think this is along the same line. So I'm not so familiar, but you said you have like 3 different clusters. Is each cluster going to have its own subgroup?
Good question. I don't think so. I think that it will, because some tooling expands beyond,
Okay.
like it lives on different clusters. For example, like ODH, we manage it on 2 different clusters. So it'd be nice if there
Okay.
was like a sub project that was like ODH, right, on operate first.
And then possibly down the line, there would be one that's very specific to one cluster. So like, yeah, like ODH dash whatever, but there's one that's general for like the ones that aren't specific.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And the SIG that would actually be responsible for things like, getting clusters installed and configuring authentication on them, that would be like a SIG DevOps or something.
Or
It would
possibly
be
like
SIG Ops for reals.
SIG installation.
Well, no, not just installation, but the people performing regular maintenance, regular operational tasks. I would normally say, oh, SIG Operations, except we've identified SIG Operations as not actually doing anything. And so what do we call the group that does the things?
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Maybe we defined today already, but I doubt in 4 minutes already some sub-projects, what you deem super important.
Yep.
Okay. I'll prompt for sub-project suggestions in the PR.
Yeah,
sure. I think
Yeah,
I feel a little bit weird that SIG Operations does not actually perform operational work.
Yeah, but I think that's because the term SIG is like a special interest that doesn't do any stuff. So at least in Torsten's graph, and what Kubernetes community does is that working groups actually do stuff, and SIGs don't own code.
Okay.
SIGs just talk. And
so we could have the WG ops, and that would be people who actually do stuff.
I mean, SIGs can own code, but they don't have to. Subgroups for sub-projects for sure.
Yeah, good.
I think for those that have been working directly hands-on operations in this call, I think this is the next step of the sprint planning, where we would kind of look at, okay, the higher level, what projects are going on and so on and so forth, and coordinating that.
I already canceled the sprint plan.
Yeah.
So next steps, Humer, do you want to create a pull request to the repository today, also with a README file which has the next or the regular meeting date in there, and then people can comment whether the time suits or not?
Is this something weekly or bi-weekly or tri-weekly?
Let's make it weekly for now, because I think we have a lot to talk about.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Anything else? Great. All right. I'll see you in chat or next call.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.